Welcome to the third and final video of the Chapter 7 Thinking, Intelligence, and Language series of 3 videos. And we're on the final part here on language. And I think you will be probably happy to know that this one is going to be a lot shorter than the other 2. So let's get to it. So language, one of the things that really separates us from any other animal. So our definition for language, obviously it's a type of communication, and it can be spoken, written, it can be signed in sign language. But the thing that ties them all together, it's a system of symbols. Symbols make language. A word is a symbol for an idea. So if you say bird, that sound pattern is a symbol for the animal that flies around. Same thing with written words, symbols, as you can see in these pictures of ancient writings. Those are clearly symbolic of different words and ideas. And sign language also uses symbols. The different hand gestures for particular words and letters and all that, those are also considered symbols. So what they all have in common, regardless of how it's spoken or how it's written, shares the following features. That is phonology. The phonology of a language are the basic sounds. So we have particular sounds in English that may or may not exist in other languages, and same thing with other non-English languages. There are many sounds that those speakers have that are built into that language that we simply don't have. So it makes it more difficult for us to pronounce, and vice versa. Morphology is how do you form words in that language? And we're talking here about, like, what do you do to a word to make it plural? In English, we add an S. That would be considered part of English's morphology. When we say, when we use past tense, there are particular ways we make a word past tense. Same thing with prefixes. If you wanted to say, like, you ran the TV show on the station for a week straight. Well, a prefix you re-ran that show. That's just one way that English says you did it again. Syntax is the rules that exist in that language for how the words are organized, how are they arranged, how are the phrases in the language arranged in order to make sense. So if you were saying something like, I went to the store, it's really important to say it in a particular manner. You could say, and people would know what you meant, if you said, to the store went I, you'd probably sound a little bit like Yoda. But if you said, store I went to, that syntax is not going to work in English. There are rules that we have that need to be followed for you to make sense to other people. Semantics is about the meanings and sometimes subtle differences in language. This has to do with words that mean more than one thing, like the word through could be, I threw the ball, I went through the doorway. It could also be figures of speech that exist in language. Like if someone said, you're putting me on, to mean you're kidding me, you understand that to mean you're joking. You got to be fooling around. You don't literally think the person means to wear you, you're putting me on, right? That's semantics. And then pragmatics is all about how important context is for the understanding of your language. When it comes to language and cognition, we see quite a connection between the the language you speak and how we think. Now, some of the questions that psychologists might ask would be, do your thoughts depend on the language you speak, or is it the other way around? Does your language depend on how you think? And that's been debated for a long time. Another aspect of cognition in language is when people have a language, an intellectual disability, that is often, not always, but often you will see them have a reduced ability to speak the language. And interesting to note that language and your thoughts are not necessarily part of the same system. When you think, you're not literally thinking in the same type of way that you would speak to another person, or much less write to another person. There's one particular specific psychologist that you should probably know. I've seen this asked on the AP test a number of times, and it's this gentleman, Benjamin Whorf. He was an American linguist, and he pioneered the idea, and it was a very popular idea throughout the 20th century, and it still has some credence and kind of inspires research to this day. He believed that the structure of a language influences how that people perceive the world and think about the world. So the idea that you will be very much a function of how your language works. The words that your language uses, the figures of speech your language uses, he believed that all of that will affect how you see the world. He thought that people who speak different languages may actually see the world differently because of their language differences. Now, biologically, we see that it's probably likely that there was physical evolution that happened even before people could speak that kind of steered humans onto that route of speaking. There were probably changes in the vocal system, the larynx that vibrates when you speak, the mouth, the lips, the tongue, all that plays a major role in speaking. As we saw in chapter 2, your brain gives a lot of real estate to your mouth, your lips, your tongue, because those are so incredibly important when it comes to the production of speech. There are very subtle things we do with our mouths in order to speak. Some evidence for there being language universals. Well, it seems that humans are pre-wired for language biologically. Humans seem, when born, we seem to kind of be ready to learn English. Oh, sorry, that's ridiculous. Not English, language. And what's the evidence for that? Well, it doesn't matter where the kid grows up. Children all around the world are going to reach their language milestones at just about the same time and in the same order. So if we weren't pre-wired for language, you wouldn't necessarily expect people in opposite sides of the world to learn language at pretty much the exact same time and do things in the same order. But that is how it works, so it suggests that there's something built into the human species. And moreover, in the brain, there seem to be particular regions that are pretty much predisposed, pre-wired for language. Remember Broca's area, the part of the brain that produces speech, or that helps you produce speech, the physical act, and Wernicke's area that helps you to understand language. When it comes to environmental influences, think about how we learn and how we teach kids to speak, and a lot of it comes through reinforcement. You speak And if you're saying it correctly, someone will respond in a positive way. You get what you want, you get the desired reaction. That's considered reinforcement. If you say it wrong, then that would be sort of like a punisher, right? So language is a learned skill. You don't do it automatically. And it's not tenable. We develop language so rapidly that it is not it's not tenable. Critical periods are also an important aspect in language. You need to be exposed to your language during a certain time in your life, or you won't be able to learn it. A critical period is a time in your development when something is most easily learned. And when it comes to language, one of the theories is that you have to learn your first language before around age 6, or you'll never be completely fluent in it and speak like a native speaker. There's also some evidence that you need to learn your second language before puberty. Same thing. If you don't, then you will be more likely to speak that language with an accent. You may, even though you may have perfect grammar, if you learn a new language after puberty, you will probably always have an accent and not sound exactly like a native speaker. And so biology, that built-in kind of pre-wired stuff, and your environment need to interact. You need to have some kind of input and a chance to speak in order to learn your language. And then finally, some milestones of language development that we see. These are what was mentioned earlier, those milestones that you'll see pretty much all around the world. Babies begin by babbling. That sort of blah, blah, man, man, blah, 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 blah. They're just kind of making random sounds. But eventually, they will start to make meaning. And they'll make all these sounds, and then those sounds will stop just being random, and then they get to their first words. Those first words in many languages are obviously for the mother or the father. But it's kind of funny when a baby is learning to speak, when they start to say like mama or dada. At first, dada or mama mean, like you could say mama and you mean mama, that lady over there, but you could also mean the dog. Mama could be your milk bottle. Mama could be that book or the television, or it could mean dada. So it's kind of like a loose application of the term. But after a while, it doesn't take all that long. It's amazingly fast the way infants develop, that one of those terms becomes only used for mama and dada, or however they say it in their language. And then they'll get to 2-word statements. So like me milk or no sleep. They start to make up little sentences, very early sentences. Okay, so that is really all there is to this particular set of notes. Let me know if you have any questions about this stuff again, and thank you for checking it out.